Welcome to Gothcast, episode 16. I am Dr. Sanders.
And this is Robbie Gore.
And today we have another movie episode. It's been enough episodes of us yelling about bands' albums for us now yell about movies.
Yeah, except for some reason we don't really yell about movies.
Yeah, not as much.
So today we're going to be talking about H.R. Giger's documentary, Dark Star.
Yeah, really good. Came out last year.
Yep.
This is 2015, so probably when this episode comes out, it might be actually January. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But then we're also going to take a look at Rosemary's Baby.
Yep, another classic.
Yeah, and then a little bit of an oddball choice here. Not as famous of a movie, but it's The Legend of Hell House.
Yeah, and this was one that we just kind of stumbled across on Netflix, and it looked like it might be kind of similar to a Hammer horror film. And
Yeah, exactly.
thought we'd give it a chance.
Yeah, pretty much the reason is I thought it looked like a Hammer horror movie. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
We looked up stills from it, and it looked visually pleasing.
Yeah. So those are the three movies we're going to talk about, and let's just get right into it. So the first one we're going to discuss is the awesome H.R. Giger documentary, Dark Star.
Yeah, so this is really a good one. There's already a lot of material out there on H.R. Giger books and documentaries.
The one that I am very familiar with is the 2010 one, H.R. Giger Revealed.
Yeah.
And I bought that from some online store years ago, and it was, I don't even think it was on Amazon at the time.
Yeah.
I'd ordered from the specific website that had it. This is before I think streaming or anything was really, really common, at least not for America.
Yeah.
And so I was really familiar with that documentary, and seeing this one was almost a shock.
Yeah, this one's very much a different perspective on H.R. Giger. I feel like a lot of the other documentaries have focused primarily on his work, whereas this one really delves into his personality and his relationships in his life.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it humanizes him so much more. As someone who has been watching things of H.R. Giger for years, I've seen all the Alien documentaries where he talks about the creation and, in his heavy accent, he's like, when I created the alien,
Yeah.
and he's all dark and spooky and menacing. It was actually a pretty hard movie for me to watch.
Yeah. No, I could see that. You really get the feeling that you finally see what H.R. Giger is like just as a person. Especially I really enjoyed all the interviews with all the people in his life, especially his psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And, getting to hear him talk about H.R. Giger.
And then, of course, his ex-wives and him talking about his past. I've never heard him open up about, of course, as the famous woman that he, I think it was his girlfriend. Who committed suicide. And I've never heard him.
He looked like he was going to break down talking about that.
I've never heard him say more than a sentence about that before.
Yep.
And it was really heart-wrenching to hear him talk about that. But let's just kind of describe the type of documentary this is. So if you've seen a lot of H.R. Giger documentaries, you'll know that most of them are kind of of the TV variety, right?
Yeah.
So growing up inside of 1948, H.R. Giger, so that sort of thing. And this is not the type of documentary. It is...
No, definitely not.
Yeah, it's much more a kind of...
It's a very personal documentary.
Yeah, it's basically just following H.R. Giger around and kind of getting to know the people in his life, and it does focus on his successes, and the type of art that he creates and everything, but it doesn't basically chalk him up to be a god. It just chalks him up to be a very talented person who just creates himself.
I would say that a lot of these documentaries really put him on a pedestal, and I really enjoy this documentary because I really felt like it brought him back down to a human level, and you really get to see what he's like, and you not only get to see the good sides of him, but you get to see perhaps some sides of him that aren't as great, and it just goes to show you, he's human like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And for me, this documentary touched me in a really personal way, just because listening to him talk about all of his hurt and his fear about death and life and existence, and how art is his way of conquering all of that. I just felt it's people say stuff like that in documentaries all the time, but it feels so, I don't know, scripted. But he was really being honest, and I really appreciate that about this documentary.
Yeah, I really did too. Actually, just the things that I I loved hearing from him was one, I really enjoyed hearing his opinions about the afterlife.
Yeah.
And how he's just like, I don't think anything happens when I die.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just over. And he's like, yeah, I can die happy. I did everything I wanted to do and more, and I thought that was really, really cool. And just, someone who you would think would be the most troubled person on earth with what he creates. And he's just like, yeah, death comes, then that's fine.
And I think part of that too is because, I don't know, as they explore like him and his relationships and his past throughout the documentary, you really kind of get especially as they start talking to a psychiatrist and stuff, you get this sense that like he really, as brave as he comes off and as brave as he's been in the art world, like he's a person who suffers from a lot of fear and depression.
Definitely.
And art is definitely his way of conquering fear for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that great sequence where he talks about how he got that skull when he was a little kid, and it terrified him so much that he dragged it around on a chain, through the streets, just to null that fear and just drive it out of him. Or when
the mummy,
the mummy, his sister made fun of him for being scared of the mummy, and so he kept going back there to look at it like every weekend. And
that kind of stuff, it was really, really interesting, just because you never get to hear those kind of personal stories about most people, let alone somebody who is normally, I would say, a pretty private guy. Like in terms of he obviously had a bar and everything, so he was a very sociable person, but in terms of letting people into his life, he had a very specific type of person that he was. Yeah,
and you really got to see that although he is, he's not like full-blown reclusive, but like you said, he is very selective about who he lets into his life. The people he lets into his life, he really does care about, and he really makes sure that, that they're just treated the way that people should be treated.
Yeah.
He really goes out of his way to help the people that he cares about, and that's really refreshing to see in someone who's as successful as him, just because, I don't know, I feel like so many people who have as big of a reputation as him are kind of jaded. And
oh, yeah. Another thing, it's just so hard to not pick things that I thought were really cool about this. The one thing I thought was really eye-opening was they were talking about his finances.
Yeah.
And everything, how...
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's such a great sequence.
Which one?
How as soon as he gets money, he invests it into things.
Yeah, and it's like he spends money on like these pretty outlandish things, like... He put in like a train in his house that goes all around,
but it's always for the sake of his art or for the sake of his happiness.
Yeah,
it's like as soon as he has money, he does something with it that he feels is valuable and productive.
Mm-hmm. That's one of those things too, is you expect a guy like that who you're like, oh, like most people would know who he is. You're like, oh, he probably has like a ridiculous amount of money, and they're talking about their finances and like, yeah, we scrape by every month.
Yeah,
like we just barely make it, and that's really actually kind of refreshing in a weird thing, It's just...
I think that's why he is still such a genuine person, is because I really do feel like it's hard to stay like this sincere person if you just have loads and loads of money that you can expend at all amounts of time.
Or if you're not even doing anything with it, you just have money for money's sake,
Yeah,
like he
that's
just
what
wanted
I mean. Like,
yeah, like that's the whole thing is like, he whenever he got a bunch of money, he's like, okay, I'm putting in the fountain, I'm gonna put in this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. And so he has like all this art at the end of it.
Well, and it really kind of, I don't want to get too esoteric here, but it really kind of brings up an interesting question about the status of celebrities and fame and fortune in this country. And so much, at least in America, like fame and fortune revolve around how much money you can make.
Mm-hmm.
And Giger's popularity is not based on that at all. And for him, money gained is very much just about being able to produce more art.
Yep.
And that's not the case in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
It's really refreshing to see. And I wish that you could see more of that in people these days.
Yeah.
Like Spielberg isn't exactly throwing all of his money into more art.
Does do a lot of weird stuff, though. I will say he invests in like a lot of really, really weird stuff. If you look at like what he does with his money, but it's not like that. You know, he's not spending like every dollar he has to make like the next movie the best he can. You know? But yeah, I get what you're saying. I just really, really like this. It was really sad to see him in such poor health. And
It
yeah.
It was kind of heart-wrenching at some points to watch him like get up from the table and like see that he needs help being walked over to the next room.
That was almost shocking for me because, like I said, I am very familiar with H.R. Giger, and I had seen some stuff, like a few videos of him from like the last years of his life. And, I knew he was bad, but, this was literally up until pretty much he died.
Yeah.
Like is when this was. I mean, literally like
he died a few months after they wrapped up filming.
Like a few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So just expect that when you're seeing this, because I don't have a lot of people who I think of as kind of like idols or anything like that. I don't really get the idea of idols or making someone bigger or trying to be
Billy
like
Idol?
Yeah. I don't really get the idea of Billy Idols. Yeah, but I don't really understand the point of idols most of the time. I don't really think people are that great,
I think it's kind of an American invention, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. But H.R. Giger was definitely somebody who, viewing all his art and hearing him talk over the years, like is someone who I had a lot of respect for. And just because he just kind of did what he wanted. I mean, his stuff was aggressive. I mean, people literally tried to smear feces on his art.
Yep.
Because they thought it was like a sin against God. And he just was like, this is my art. Like, this is, what can you do,
Yeah.
And he just kept doing it. He's so skilled. He could have made any kind of art he wanted, right? But he just did what felt right. And he could have totally tanked. And it was really hard to do what he did. In fact, it was like, he didn't even make a ton of money until he actually started doing like films,
Yep.
Even then, it wasn't insane amount of money.
And whatever money he did make,
Yeah. I just had a lot of respect for him. And seeing somebody who you have a lot of respect for or you've been watching for years and years and years, right when they're going to die, it's like a different person.
Yeah.
Is very strange. It's like, that's the same person, but they're kind of like an enigma trapped in a body.
I don't know. Perhaps it's because I already knew that he had died, when I watched this film.
Yeah.
But there really almost seems to be this sense like amongst like his family and his friends that they know he's going to die soon, because like they really open up about him and he gives them permission to. Like I know when his wife's talking about like one of his paintings or something.
Oh yeah.
He's like, which one? And she's like, oh, that one. He's like, oh, the one about the LSD trip. She's like, I can say that? He's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, whatever. Just walks away.
But like everybody, like really, when they start talking about how much he means to them, they really start tearing up. And that's really refreshing to see in documentaries. Because I feel like people, so often in documentaries, they get interviewed about someone and then they just kind of, just give this clinical, oh, they're like this and this. But they don't really like show you what the dynamic between them is like.
Yeah, it was just a great documentary. I was surprised. I thought it was just really going to be kind of another, here's what I did this time, and then this year I did this, and this year I did this, and just like a whole bunch of kind of like, here's what I achieved this year, here's what I did this year. But they still do cover that. If you're looking for that kind of documentary to actually learn something about him.
Yeah, they keep up with what he's been doing. And they do some historical stuff from the beginning of his success to now, and the museum opening, the bar, and all that stuff.
Yeah, they still use, if you've seen a whole bunch of these documentaries, then you will have seen when he's making the alien movies, the things where he's molding the stuff and painting it.
Him talking about, they said that my eggs were too much like a vagina. Yeah. He's like, so I just made them 2 vaginas.
It's twice as sinful. Yeah, that is but yeah, so they have all that footage in there, like the same kind of stuff that you've seen in other documentaries about him. But also, the one thing I loved is that they include a whole bunch of stuff that I have never seen. Like, I have a DVD of like all his like little short like Super 8, and I think it's like a few of the 16mm things they did. And they're really cool, but this has like a ton of like homemade footage.
Oh, it does.
And I was like, wow. And they did a really good job of like kind of restoring it and making it look really nice.
Yep.
I was really surprised because, I mean, dang, like that stuff is like, I would love to have that on like a DVD, just like all of his footage that he'd shot.
It was also cool to see like how well he gets along with his ex-wife and that he still cares about her. He like gave her a house and everything.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Yep.
It just seems like, he found people he loved and cared for, and then just kept them in his life. You know,
Yeah.
like he didn't just like, okay, well, you're not this anymore, so goodbye. You know.
Yep.
And I don't know, the whole thing was just really, really refreshing. I kind of wish they had talked more about some of the films, like he had talked specifically about some of the films that he had done.
Yeah.
Like I always wanted to hear like what his take on like Dune was, because
I feel like there isn't a lot out there on his take on Dune. Like there's like tons of information about him doing alien stuff, but like,
yeah, well, it's just like all that stuff that didn't get made that he was working on. And actually, one of the cool things was the guy from Celtic Frost is his like assistant.
That was actually one of the interviews that really like struck me, was him talking about his relationship with H.R. Giger and how Giger really helped them out when they were starting and believed in them when like every record label was telling them that their music was crap.
Yeah.
And he was just like, no, you should keep doing this, and like really went out of his way to help them. And like he comes up and he like confronts Giger, and like you can tell that Giger still, you know, he doesn't really like to be emotive on camera and stuff. He's like, you know, you mean a lot to me, right? And Giger's like, yeah, you mean a lot to me too. He just, you know, tries to skim over it. He's
almost shocked.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, thank you.
But the guy for Celtic Frost, he's like, no, like really, like thank you.
Yeah, it's super cool. This movie, I highly recommend. I mean, I could literally talk forever on how many things.
This is, I gotta be honest, probably one of my favorite documentaries of the last year.
Yeah, I feel like there's some other one I saw that was just really good, but this is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one I didn't expect, because I've seen a whole bunch of H.R. Giger stuff. I've seen all the things where I talk about his art in his museum, but man, this was a very, very different look, a very modern documentary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel like it was, I don't know, it was the right documentary to be made before he passed. Like,
yeah, oh, definitely.
Like it would have been a shame if it's just been another retrospective of his work.
Well,
like,
think about it. If they had started production a year later, you know, like it would have been one of those things where you wouldn't have had all these intimate moments.
Yep.
And apparently he was even like, you know, he let him film and everything, but he was like, do you really need to see this?
Yeah.
Because I looked up an interview with the filmmaker, and
well, they get pretty personal. Like they're filming his family dinners and stuff. And
yeah, apparently he was just like, you can film all you want, but like, I don't know why you would. This is boring. Like, but then of course those are the moments that you want to see.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we both highly recommend this documentary.
Yeah, Dark Star is awesome, and I can't recommend this highly enough. If you're okay, yeah, I'll put one caveat in there. If you're not really into H.R. Giger, or you're not into dark art or like kind of sexual art, like if you're kind of squeamish about that,
maybe. But I do feel like this, like, if you want to know something about H.R. Giger, even if you aren't necessarily into that as much, this is probably the right documentary, because it spends the least amount of time like just staring at his art.
Nah, that's true.
But like you said, if you are particularly squeamish about just search Giger and you'll get an idea.
Yeah. So that's probably the one thing I can say about it. But then again, that film obviously isn't made for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, highly recommend it. Okay, so this is going to be our news segment for this episode. And it's kind of a slow news week for Goth.
Yeah.
Passing up Halloween into December.
December really is kind of it's not a lot to say about Goth stuff during December usually, news-wise.
Which is weird because you think there would be, because everybody actually is able to wear a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
But the main story that we want to focus on today is it has been 25 years since Edward Scissorhands was released.
Yep.
And this is the boyfriend that every goth girl wants.
Yep. It's pretty much, you know, Robert Smith with Scissorhands.
Yeah. But it's a really good movie. I've seen it like 1,000 times.
Yeah, I have to say, I think the movies that I watched growing up are probably not the standard kids movies. Mm-hmm. And Edward Scissorhands, although, you know, it is a kids movie, kind of.
Just all the way up until the end.
Yeah, it's kind of a kids movie. my parents decided it was a kids movie for me.
Yeah.
And so this movie is a big part of my childhood. And, it's cool to pay a little bit of homage to it. I know we do poke some fun at Tim Burton and his work.
Well, it's very easy.
Yeah. But that movie, it really was something very different at the time. And it really is a solid, though it's not like a true kids film. I feel like it's something that you can show your kids and they'll get and appreciate, because I remember watching it and kind of really understanding and feeling empathy for this character and sorrow. And
I guess, I don't know, it's hard for me to remember, but I can see what you're saying. One thing I did want to say about it, because piece of trivia I know about this movie, and if we ever actually do an episode on it or anything like that, then I'll probably mention it again. Is when it was first tested to audiences, it was tested in like Southern California.
Yep.
It tested really awfully because it was like, oh, that like at the end when he kills the jock dude.
Yep.
It was like, what are you talking about? That guy couldn't beat up that guy. Like, he's such a wuss. And they all because they all related to the douchebag.
Yeah.
So it tested really bad, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, what's going on with this movie? And then they played to like a more alternative audience, and then it got like super ridiculously high praise. Like, oh, okay, we're gonna find.
Have you ever been to one of those, by the way?
What?
One of the little screenings where they make you fill out questionnaires?
Oh yeah.
I've been to a few of them.
I went to I'm trying to think of the movie.
I think I did one for like The Hangover Part 3 or something stupid like that.
Ah, weird.
Yeah.
I did one of those ones where like, you come out of the theater and then they like do the bit for the TV. It was crazy. No matter what it is.
See, the place I did it, like it was like a private screening in an industrial building, and then they just like paid you cash afterwards.
Weird.
Yeah. And you weren't like allowed to tell anybody about what happened.
Oh. Cool. Movie probably sucked.
I was actually one of the lucky people because the way that one worked is they selected 40 people for the thing, and everyone got paid, but only 20 people actually got to watch the movie, and I didn't have to watch it.
Weird. That's pretty cool, I guess.
Yep.
So I think it's weird to think that 25 years have gone by since Edward Scissorhands was released.
Right? It doesn't feel like it's been that long.
No, it really doesn't. I don't know. I guess if you look at Johnny Depp now, you can kind of see it.
Yeah.
He's starting to get like dad face.
He is.
You know what I mean? By that. Not that he's bad look. I mean, he's definitely not bad looking, obviously, but he's starting to look more like a older guy.
Yeah. So is Leonardo DiCaprio, finally.
Leonardo DiCaprio is morphing into Jack Nicholson.
He is going through some interesting facial and hair changes.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I think it's a great movie, and it's good we celebrate it. So, this is our very short goth news for this week, just because it's just so hard to find stories at this moment. And hopefully, we'll get some more before. I seem like everybody's just focused on Christmas right now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if nothing else, maybe there'll be some new unreleased commentary stuff that gets put out for this because of the anniversary, but
good luck.
Yeah.
That is like the worst. If anybody buys the DVDs or anything specifically for the commentary for Tim Burton on Edward Scissorhands, it is so awful. I'm sorry. Like, I love Tim Burton, but man, like, he barely talks during commentary, and he like mumbles in the microphone. In fact, he talks so little.
Johnny Depp can't talk about it because he's never seen it.
That's true. But Tim Burton, he talks so little during the commentaries that they bump up the music because he just sits there and watches it.
He would just get like wrapped up in his movie and just sit there watching it.
I always remember the one part where he's like, it shows like the photos of like the fake photos. You know, they take the photos of the actors.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, I want it to look like Sears. It's like, those are bad photos. Love you, Tim Burton, but man, like, step up your commentary game.
Hopefully this doesn't get released in 3D.
Oh man, that'd be scary in 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also I want to mention Vincent Price's last on-screen role, and he dies. What's up with that?
Yeah.
Good movie. Okay, so now we're on to Rosemary's Baby.
Yep. So this was filmed it was released in 1968.
Stars Mia Farrow, one of the roles in which she's very extremely famous for, and
directed by Roman Polanski.
Yeah. That's right, Roman Polanski. And this was, I mean, I really like Roman Polanski's films. You know, obviously he's a touchy subject because of, you know, the whole child molestation thing. And
Yeah.
But, I mean, he directed Chinatown. He directed The Pianist. I mean, just those two films, you could even just say, like, that's some of the best films I've ever seen.
Definitely.
And, of course, you have John Cassavetes, and he plays Guy. And let's just kind of go briefly over the story. So,
All right.
this was a very controversial film when it came out.
Yeah. By the way, there will be spoilers. This is an old movie, so just get over it now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of ways for you to watch Rosemary's Baby from 1968.
Yeah.
So there will be spoilers. The plot of this movie is this woman, Rosemary, and her, I think it's her husband.
Yeah, her husband, Guy.
Guy.
Terrible name.
They move into this apartment complex, and
Someone's recently died. That's why the apartment's available.
yeah, and they notice that the apartment's kind of strange in the way it's set up. And
Lots of strange plants growing there.
well, one of the doors is blocked off.
Yep.
So they notice that there's a few things that are strange with it. And, you know, they're a newly married couple. And keep in mind, this is filmed in 1968, and they're trying to be like a very typical couple at times. So she stays at home, and he goes out, and he's an actor, and he tries to go.
Before any of the creepy stuff happens and it's just them, it does feel very Breakfast at Tiffany's kind of like.
It does. In fact, like, that's one of the things that is strange about this is at the time, you know, this was probably very much spoke to like the middle class person.
Yep.
And it's I'm not surprised that, you know, he made it so relatable. In fact, they actually really feel like pretty real characters.
They do.
Which is, to Mia Farrow and John Cassavetes, they're to their credit. And so they move to this apartment, and they're kind of getting settled and everything, and they meet their, like, not necessarily neighbors, but they're like across the way neighbors, like the other side neighbors.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to explain. Like, if you know, like,
Well, first they meet the girl who's staying with them.
Rosemary meets a girl named Terry, and she's saying that, oh, you know, I'm living with the Cassavetes.
Yeah, and they've been so good to me. They've been take care of me, and they helped me get off my feet. Like, I used to be on drugs.
Yeah, and so
and then magically, like 2 days later, she commits suicide.
yeah, she jumps out a window.
Yep.
And like, they're like, oh, I can't believe she did that, you know. And they meet the Cassavetes.
Yeah,
And
they're not Spanish.
yeah, Cassavetes. But so it's Minnie and Roman. And actually, one of the things I want to say is Ruth Gordon in this, who plays Minnie, is from Harold and Maude.
Yep,
And so I thought that was really cool.
it was.
But they meet the couple, the really elderly couple, Minnie and Roman Cassavet.
You know, at first they just kind of seem like the odd, you know, overly nosy, wants to drag you over to their house kind of older couple.
The
but
ones you can't get away from when you live in an apartment complex. Like, you're trying to
it's like when you go to visit your grandparents and you get stuck talking to them for like 5 hours and you're like staring at your watch. And
exactly. Especially, like, they're a young couple. They don't want to necessarily become friends with this really elderly couple. And
But Guy gets hooked in because he hears about Roman's, acting connections.
yeah.
And so he's like, oh, you know, I'm going to go have dinner with him again. you
Yeah,
know?
so he hears all this, like, crazy stories about life and all this hookups and all this stuff. He's like, oh, you knew this person and you knew this. And
Because we should probably explain that Guy's an aspiring actor who's hasn't had much luck at this point in the film.
yeah, he's been in some commercials. In fact, in the beginning,
He's been in 2 plays that nobody's heard of and a bunch of commercials.
yeah, one of the commercials in the beginning, she's like watching it.
Yeah,
It's like a Suzuki.
The Yamaha.
Yamaha, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's not like a big actor.
Yep.
So basically, he starts getting really close with them,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, you know, it's like, it seems really noticeable. Like, he always wanted to go hang out with them, and Rosemary is like, before he was very standoffish and like, oh, I don't want to get stuck with them, and
Yeah.
she's like, okay, and then all of a sudden he starts hanging out with them more, and
Rosemary also notices that there's something off about them more quickly than Guy does. And obviously, we'll get to what happens.
yeah,
But from the start, she's very skeptical about them.
yeah. So they're trying for a baby.
Yep.
Like, you know, that's what you do.
Very 60s film plot.
Yeah. Well, she just seems so excited. I just want to have a baby. Like, you know, that's what we do. We get married and have a baby, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying, and it hasn't happened yet. And then all of a sudden it does.
Yeah. We should probably mention how that happens.
Yeah. So Minnie, the elderly neighbor, brings over some chocolate mousse.
Yep.
And Rosemary is eating it and it tastes funny.
Yeah, she says as a chalky undertaste.
Yeah. And so
And Guy just makes fun of her, and he's like, "No, eat it. Stop being ridiculous."
Yeah. And so she only eats like a little bit of it, and then she throws the rest away.
Yep. But apparently
And-
she ate enough.
Yeah. And so she's basically like roofied.
Pretty much.
She goes to bed and is surrounded by her naked neighbors and people.
At this point, we're not really sure what's going on, and she thinks it's a dream.
Yeah.
And because it's shot in a very surreal way, it keeps cutting between like her dreaming and her being awake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically she's surrounded by like a bunch of naked people who are like chanting and singing, and her husband's there, and all of a sudden she's being tied down to the bed, and then a very devilish looking figure kind of mounts her.
Yep. And rapes her.
Yep.
And it's not like it's super graphic scene, but especially by today's standards.
I think
But it's-
because of the surrealism, it doesn't strike one as being very graphic, because it does have this very much like she's not really sure if this is real, like, and it keeps cutting between her seeing other things and coming back to the rape, and
And it's like, it's just really trippy. Like,
Yeah.
it's super weird. Even, like, I would say it's weird by today's standards. It's definitely not, like, the most shocking thing I've ever seen, especially, like, in terms of horror today. I mean, people do crazy stuff, like, now. But it's definitely very unsettling.
oh, definitely.
Like, especially just the way it's shot, because she didn't take enough of the drug to, like, be passed out completely, so she basically realizes what's happening. She's like, this is real, you know?
Yeah, she like can't put her finger on it. She's like, this feels real, but like she keeps having these dreamlike figures that appear, and so she's not sure if it's real or not. And when she kind of comes to in the morning, everything feels so real that she's like, oh, that must have been a dream. But she's covered in all these scratches.
Yeah, and the husband says, oh, I just had sex with you while you were asleep.
Yeah, I just raped you while you were asleep.
Like, seriously, like, who the hell would even say that? Not only...
and then he's like all shocked when she like looks at him cross-eyed. He's like, what? You said you wanted a baby.
That's just like such a weird... That like moment always shocks me, because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that's your excuse?
Yeah, I know. That seems like the worst excuse of all times.
Yeah. So that happens, and then just a few days later, she finds out she's pregnant.
Yep.
And so she thinks, oh, you know, like, I can't believe it. You know, we've been trying so hard, and I'm finally pregnant. And she starts having, like, abdominal pain, like, really bad abdominal pain.
Yeah, well, and Roman and Minnie immediately recommend that she sees their personal friend, who's like the best doctor in the city.
Saperson or
Yep.
something. Yeah.
And oh no, don't go to your doctor. We have a friend. He's like the best in the city. You know, he'll take care of you. He won't charge you very much. He's a good friend of ours.
Yep.
And so she even looks into his credentials, and he's really well known. So she's like, okay, like she goes to see him, and she's like, oh, like my other doctor said that I should take some pills, and he's like, oh no pills. Minnie will just make you herbal drinks.
Yeah, so basically everything with the baby, and this goes on for quite a while, everything with the baby involves their neighbors.
Yep.
And also involves, you know, like the doctor is through the neighbors. Basically, everyone she's communicating with, even the people in the apartment complex, they're all known through her neighbors.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Guy seems to be really, really into listening to him. He's like, no, you should listen to him. You should only do what they do. And, you know, like every time something's gonna happen, he like calls them or.
And all of a sudden, he's started to have success come out of nowhere in his acting career.
Yeah.
Suddenly, he lands a part, and he's getting more parts, and he's buying nice clothes, and
Yeah, and basically anyone who questions them at this point is bad things are happening to him. Like
Yep.
her friend Hutch basically finds out, is like, I need to speak to you right away, and then he goes into a coma immediately. And,
Yeah.
And so he's trying to basically tell her information about their neighbors.
Yep.
And
even how he landed the part
the
was
guy went blind.
Yep.
Yeah. The guy who had the original part went blind, so then Guy basically gets the part because of that.
Yep.
So all this crazy stuff starts happening, and Rosemary slowly starts to find out that they're like witches, or she believes that they're witches.
Yeah.
That's because Hutch had given her this book.
Yeah.
And so she's reading all this stuff. She's like, oh my gosh, you know, like, I think there are ancient
witches
from this time and like their ancestors were.
And well, there's a very noticeable scene in the movie where Hutch comments that the supposed herb that she's wearing around her neck seems more like a fungus. And as she's reading through the book, these satanic cults often use the fungus that's very specific for satanic purposes.
Yep. And so it just builds and builds. It's almost like a giant mystery. And I think it's just very, especially some parts of this movie are so disturbing. Like,
yep.
And they're very unsettling. And not only is the baby thing, so basically she finds out she's carrying this basically the spawn of Satan, you know,
yep.
like, and
well, she doesn't find that out until literally the last sequence of the movie.
Well, it's confirmed. I mean, everybody knows.
Well, everybody knows, but she doesn't.
Yeah, she even like has the baby. You know, she tries to go to doctor, her original doctor, and he basically almost has her committed because she's like, oh, there's witches and they're trying to get my baby, and
they're like shoving antipsychotics down her throat and sedating her, and
she has the baby, and then they say, oh, you lost the baby,
miscarriage.
Yeah, and she just knows that that's not true.
Yep.
And they keep sedating her. Yeah, they keep pumping drugs into her,
but she hears a baby crying next door, and she's all like, yeah, Roman and Minnie a little old to be having a baby.
She basically fools all the people because it's like literally tons of people, like everyone inside of her apartment complex is trying to sedate her and keep her like thinking that there's like nothing happening.
Yep.
And so she just hides all the pills so she isn't all doped up.
Yep.
And sneaks into, she finds a secret passage.
Yeah. She grabs a big old butcher knife and it's a secret passage, but it just leads her directly into what looks like a regular opening for a room.
Yeah, it's really weird. So she finds this giant congregation of like Satanist witches.
Yep. And they're all gathered around, and lo and behold, in the corner of the room, there's a big black baby carriage with an upside down crucifix hanging from it.
And sure enough, she sees the baby. She's like, "What did you do to it?" Like, Abed is saying it's like disfigured, basically.
She notices the eyes at first. She comments on the eyes. Yeah. She's like, "What did you do to it? Look at what his eyes." They're like, he has his father's eyes, and she's like, "He doesn't have Guy's eyes." And then this is the only part that feels a bit campy to me. But they're like, "Guy is not his father."
Yep.
He is Satan's son. Hail Satan! Everybody starts chanting "Hail Satan."
Yep, that happens in this movie. But yeah, it's so then she doesn't believe it, and she's like, "I can't believe you're doing this." And like, this is one chick. Oh man, the one lady is such a bitch.
Yeah, it's the old lady with the long gray hair. I don't remember her character name.
I don't remember. I think it's like Laura or something. But she's like, "Get away from the baby!" Yeah,
and she's like rocking the baby very aggressively.
Yeah, and so Rosemary. Well, the woman basically shoot away, and the guy Roman, the guy neighbor is basically like,
"Come here, you rock the baby.
Be the mother. You know, like this is your child.
You gave birth to this."
Yeah, so she basically goes over and comforts. I think it's Adrian's the name.
Yep.
And so he's
because it's named after the satanic grandfather.
Yeah. And so she starts rocking the baby. So that's literally the end. Is she has Satan's baby.
And she kind of like smiles a little bit when she's rocking.
Her baby.
I know, but it's creepy because it's like, okay, are you going to mother Satan now?
So it's really important that we went over basically the entire story because it's really weird.
Yeah.
Like you can't basically not finish that story once you started. But
well, and plus you know what's happening by like 30 minutes into the movie.
I would say by halfway through it, you definitely know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like you don't know if the baby's going to be born or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know what the
You know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like,
and so this movie, I have to say, it's definitely not my favorite Roman Polanski movie. If you've ever read the book,
either.
This is often credited as one of the closest adaptations to a book ever.
Yep.
Especially for a Hollywood movie. And most people credit that to the fact that Roman Polanski, it was his first adaptation of something.
Yeah.
And so he didn't think that he could change a whole bunch.
Yeah. Well, what this kind of reminds me of is that in a little, it's not exactly the same, but it often makes me think of Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Lolita. And that's also credited as one of the most accurate depictions of Lolita.
I don't think it is anymore.
It still is.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
There's still not been a more accurate version of Lolita. But also not my favorite Stanley Kubrick movie.
Well, they still had to change a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean,
Yeah,
you have to
I know,
because of
exactly.
the content of that book.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I get it. But this is surprisingly close to the original, and I would say that's almost one of its flaws.
yeah, I do think, people often complain when directors make creative decisions about changing, pieces of the book. But it really is true that written text and film are different mediums, and you can't just directly take the book and transfer it over to a movie. It just doesn't work that way. If you relate it to music, it's like, when a band takes a song that they play live and does an acoustic version where they just play the exact same parts on acoustic guitar, it sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be rearranged for that medium. And the same goes for film. If you're taking a book, like, you really have to work hard to find a way for it to sit right on the screen, for the script to interact well without directly, like, bashing the book or what it's about. And
Yeah, I think that was actually one of the things that affected the pacing in this.
yeah, unfortunately for me, like, just because they do try to include so much from the book, like, the pacing is just, it's so slow. Like, I'm an hour into this movie and I'm like, really? There's this much left of it? Like, I already know how this is going to end. Like, we don't need to see all of these scenes where we're just basically watching her get more and more and more suspicious. Like, you could have shown this to us with maybe 3 scenes instead of 8 scenes.
Yeah, exactly. It does have that sort of 60s kind of pacing. There's nothing like really against it.
It's not the film's fault. I mean, it came out in the 60s. Like,
Yeah.
most of the movies that came out in that time frame are going to have that pacing to them. But I find it a little bit distracting, given that the story is a pretty damn good story.
I would agree with that. And I would say it's hard to say how original it is nowadays because it doesn't seem like an original story nowadays. But you gotta understand, at the time, that was 1968.
No, that's a huge story back then.
Yeah, and this was really almost so grounded in reality to some extent because instead of like outside of the, like, oh, we're using magic to blind people or anything like that.
Yep.
Like, they're sedating a woman. There's rape. There's, suspicion of your neighbors. It
also kind of reminds me a little bit of the book, The Yellow Wallpaper, in the way that the husband just keeps telling the wife that there's nothing going on. There's nothing going on while she's like losing it. And,
Huh. I would say this movie is still unsettling, even to me, because it does show your own little world that's really creepy. It's not like there's some big grand adventure. They're not going to these historic places, like traveling across the world. They're just in their apartment, and this is happening to them.
They're just in their apartment, and all the people who are part of this cult are these, big members of society who just seem like normal people.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you like how real something like that could be, like how crazy people who are part of some Satanist cult are probably not going to be in some secret church, in Switzerland sacrificing lamb goats.
Yeah, exactly. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
And not to say all Satanists are like this, obviously.
No, this is a very specific depiction of Satanism. Also not trying to say that there is or isn't any basis behind Satanism, but just the fact that like someone could do this to you. Like someone,
that's what the unsettling thing is.
Someone could be drugging you and screwing with your brain. And
But it's a good movie. Like, there are some scenes that really stick out to me as actually pretty well shot and well done. Obviously, the unsettling nature is something that like. It shows that it's effective, even though if I don't particularly like those scenes.
They did her makeup really well when she's like losing weight. Like she looks so like sickly.
It's like concerning.
Yeah.
But then even just the beginning, like before all that stuff goes crazy and Guy changes his character completely.
Yeah.
Like when they're about to like bang, she's like, "Let's make love," and then it's like, okay, like it's like it's just like totally realistic, like how you would do that. And I just think their interactions feel really genuine. Everybody has met that neighbor or that person who's just like, oh god, like please go away.
Yep.
on the technical side of things, this isn't the most technically impressive movie.
No, but I mean, given its time frame, I don't think that it's necessarily like bad from a technical perspective.
No, I don't think it is. In fact, I think it's probably pretty good for the time, and probably above a lot of movies. But the thing is, it just doesn't do an insane amount. I would say that the thing that actually does have going for it that a lot of cheaper movies or a lot of like other movies don't is actually has a lot of long shots.
Yeah.
Where like in the beginning when he's showing the apartment, it's all like one shot.
Yep. It's not like today's editing where we cut to a new camera every 3 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really fun. In fact, I noticed it when I was watching it.
Yep. But that's also a very 60s kind of style of shooting.
Oh yeah. Especially
there's a lot of that in Lolita.
Even the end, I think the ending too has like one super long shot.
Yep.
But it's really, really good in that way. The other stuff, like the color correction, the composures of the shots, everything like that, it's not like the best.
There's just nothing that stands out about them, I feel like. There's nothing bad, but like...
Well, here's the thing is, it's good in that I don't notice anything as like being like a movie. It does feel like a real house. It feels like real people, and that's the best thing. Like,
yep.
It's not all flashy. As far as like my personal taste, I'll say Rosemary's Baby isn't my favorite kind of movie. Even though it's a critically acclaimed movie. I mean, it's like one of IMDb's probably I think top movies. It's highly rated. It is a good movie for what it is. It just wasn't my thing as much. I mean, I've seen the movie before, and then rewatching it for this, we have to just sit down and like really watch them.
Yeah.
Just I kind of had the same opinion the first time I saw it. Is that it's okay. It's not my favorite thing. Yeah, it's got its own thing going for it. And if they remade this movie, it would be totally like, all we have to make these characters super normal. So let's have them live in a white picket fence, and it'd be like the most insane over the top way to make them look normal.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, they really feel like they're pretty normal people.
Like, middle class, just trying to get whatever apartment they can. They get one that some lady, just died from because it's the cheapest thing they can afford, and
that's like what
it's very real.
Actually, it felt really real, and I think that's probably where they would misstep the most in it, because most of these horror movies and stuff, it's like they're giving birth to a demon. It's like, okay, it's super nuts, and
usually there would be like they'd be on vacation somewhere, and they'd like be walking through the woods, and then like people grab them and take them hostage, and then like they summon some demon who like impregnates her, and they're tortured throughout the film. I feel like that's what the modern version of this would have been, unfortunately.
Yep,
and I'm glad that this film isn't that film.
Yeah, exactly. And it does benefit from that subtlety.
Yeah.
At least what today would be subtle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I recommend it. If the movie concept sounded interesting to you, then go for it. Like, that's because that's what it is. It's a woman who gives birth to Satan's baby and is confused the whole time.
Yeah, I gotta say, it really made me think about when we were talking about Suspiria and how there were so many plot issues with that movie, yet we can't deny the fact that we just love it.
Yeah.
But there aren't like a ton of plot issues with this movie, but there's still something lackluster about it for me.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily lackluster. I think it's just...
This movie doesn't wow me. Like, it's like a good little movie, but I don't really feel compelled to like watch it again and again the same way I do Suspiria. Like,
yeah, I would say that the entertainment value of it is definitely not rooted in learning more about it as you rewatch it.
Yeah.
Or in like a group setting, like this isn't it's kind of like just a good story, just the good way the story's told.
It's a good one to just kind of watch by yourself, and
and it's if you just want to be creeped out, like that's really what this movie's about. And unfortunately, that does slim down its appeal.
I suppose so.
I still think it's good, and it's of course if it's Roman Polanski, like you have a pretty good shot of it being a pretty good film.
Yeah, it's definitely worth your time to check out.
Yeah, I still don't. I gotta say, like, even though this is a very good creepy movie, for Roman Polanski, I like so many of his other movies so much better. Like,
I agree with you.
And like, I totally get why this film is loved in the way it is, but man, it just does not appeal to me in that way.
I was just intrigued by because I had a feeling of what my opinion was going to be of this movie, when we started looking at this analytically.
Yeah.
And my Netflix is usually pretty accurate at scoring films for me at this point. but it thought that I was going to give it like a full 5 stars. And I was like, after watching it, I was like, Netflix, you have failed me. Like it's not a bad movie. It just,
Yeah.
it doesn't give the 5-star rating for me.
Yeah. So that's Rosemary Baby. It's a good film. If it sounds interesting, watch it and kind of decide for yourself. I think some people probably would love this movie, but
I think a lot of people will.
I think I just thought it was like pretty okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't bad at all, but it wasn't like the best movie. Yeah. Okay, so now we're on to our final film, The Legend of Hell House.
Yeah, so this is directed by, I guess that's pronounced John Hugh.
John Ho? How? Probably it's John Howe.
Okay, I don't know. It's Hough for those of you who are not looking at what we're looking at.
Yeah.
This is definitely kind of a oddball that we threw in the group. We just kind of happened to be scrolling through Netflix and came across this and decided to include it in the review because it seemed interesting.
Yeah. And I thought it looked like a Hammer horror film. And apparently he had tried to get hired by Hammer, but I don't think it ever happened, the director. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it was up to it may have been up to the quality of some of the Hammer horror films, but not like Curse of Frankenstein or The Horror of Dracula or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was released in 1973. It's like a...
Made $2.5 million in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, this was like I want to say it's like a standard horror film.
It kind of is. Like, this isn't a classic, but for the time, it's like probably, like, I don't even know what to include for horror films now just because I don't watch them anymore. At least the new ones.
It just would have been like one of the slightly better ones.
Yeah, it just probably kind of would have been like The Conjuring or something, like by today's standards or something.
Yeah, probably something like that where it stood out.
It was an above average horror film, but not exactly critically acclaimed.
Yeah. So the plot is basically these 3 people, well actually 4, they go to this mansion. It's the Hell House. That's what's nicknamed.
Well, they're hired.
Yeah, they're hired to investigate the Hell House to see if the afterlife, somebody can live after death.
Yeah, but apparently there's been another investigation. Which
2. I think it's 2 investigations.
Okay.
Already.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that aren't made clear in this movie.
Yeah. So this group of people go, and so one's like a psychic.
There's 2 psychics actually.
Yeah, it was Pamela.
There's like a mental psychic and a physical psychic.
Yeah, it's Florence Tanner. So that's the girl, like the little young girl. And then Benjamin Fisher, and he's like the one who had been in the mansion before. Yeah. And everyone else had died, and he lived.
He like barely survived.
Yeah. And then you have Lionel Barrett and his wife.
He's the scientific man.
Yeah, I am scientific. And then his wife, Anne. So they go to this mansion to investigate if there can be life after death. And it goes on. Yeah, it's just... Yeah, they just investigated and tried to see if it happened. So it's haunted by ghosts.
A bunch of crap happens throughout it that would very obviously point to it being haunted. Mm-hmm. But Mr. Science is suspicious about the existence of paranormal activity. He believes in psychic activity, strangely enough. He thinks that girl psychic is causing everything.
Yeah, it's really weird. But so they basically, the ghost of this guy named Blasco is haunting this mansion, and
except they think it's his son's ghost this time
Daniel
for some
Blasco.
reason. Yeah, Daniel
I think
Blasco.
It's both, or it's really strange. I think it was
they wrap it up by discovering it's just the original Blasco.
Yeah,
who's pretending to be.
I'm gonna try and explain as best I can. Okay, so they think it's this guy, this crazy guy, who is like all into all this debauchery and killing and stuff.
Yeah, like raping, killing, torturing.
Bestiality is haunting this mansion, right? And one of the psychics, the girl psychic, can channel ghosts, like she can channel spirits through her body.
Yep.
And they do it a whole bunch of times, and they get results. Like, they definitely get results.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you just think that they would be like, okay, it's a ghost. Like, we have to deal with this. But it's really weird because Lionel, the rational science guy, like, won't believe it. He's like...
He just refuses to admit that she's channeling ghosts.
Yeah.
Even though, like, everything that happens, I feel like you would just be like, okay, there's ghosts.
One of my biggest issues with him being skeptical, right, is not only was everybody in that mansion before like dead. Okay, so
and it's happened twice.
Yeah. There's the whole dinner scene where like the tension between all the characters is really strong, and the girl gets mad at him. It's like, why did you treat me this way? And all of a sudden everything goes all crazy and fire starts spewing out and the table starts rocking and stuff. Even at that point, even if you're like, oh, she's the one doing it, right? It's not a ghost. I would still be like, why does she have supernatural powers?
No, that's my point. Is like he's not skeptical of her having psychic ability to like throw things around and start fires and blow things up, but he's skeptical about ghosts possessing her.
Yeah, it's really, really strange. If you see it, then that will make sense, because it's just like, basically this guy is supposed to be all sciencey, but he's working with these people who are like psychics and can show that they can do crazy stuff, but he's like,
his wife just seems to be there to serve the plot.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand why he's skeptical of like believing her. She's like, oh, there's this ghost around here, and he's like, I don't think so. It's like, why didn't you think that? Did you see what's happening to you? Do you see what's happening around you?
And of course, the only one who can really solve the mystery is the person who's been in the house before.
Yeah, of course. I already saw that coming.
But like, it makes it feel like it's a sequel to something.
But it's not.
But it's not. So that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, basically this happens way quickly at the end. So like the girl,
literally in the last 15 minutes of the movie this happens.
Yeah. So throughout most of the movie, the girl psychic thinks that she is basically communicating with this guy's son, the main ghost's son.
Yeah.
And
she like has sex with his,
kind of, sort of.
It's
yeah.
kind of implied.
Yeah, kind of. But then I think this is also based on a book, which I think is funny. I think we accidentally did that, where we picked another movie that was based on a book.
Oh, it is based on a book.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But she thinks that she's communicating with this specific ghost, but it's not, and she basically gets fooled by the main ghost and gets killed. And so she writes like a B for Belasco. Like, doesn't help anything. But,
yeah, I know.
But the
even though the two people that it could possibly be both share the same last name.
Yeah, I thought that was exactly. But there's like what I thought would be like a throwaway line.
Yep.
Early in the movie where he's talking about the guy. He's like, "Oh, what was this guy like?" So he's like, "He was a roaring giant. He's this crazy guy." And at the very end, when they're trying to confront the ghost, like when they're trying to leave, he starts yelling at him. He's like, "Take me on. Who do you think you are?" And he notices like everyone who's been crushed, it's like their legs are sticking out.
Yep.
Or something. And he's like, "Oh, that's it." And so he says like, "You're no giant." And when they find his body, it turns out like one of the reasons he was like so mad and like crazy, and one of the things he was so mad and crazy about was he was short. So he cut off his legs and put prosthetic legs on. Yeah,
so basically he's been raping and killing people because he's short.
Yeah. And that I wish I could say that wasn't like one of the things. That's like literally the thing that stops him.
That's the driving plot of the movie.
Is that they basically are able to kill him because they find out he was short.
Oh yeah, by the way, we should mention that throughout the movie, Mr. Scientist develops a machine that will annihilate ghosts after he's determined that ghosts do exist.
Yeah, think about it as like a proton pack from Ghostbusters, but it works like a fumigator.
Yeah.
Like we have to close up the house and it sucks all the ghosts in.
And so he thinks that he gets rid of all the ghosts with his machine. But then all of a sudden, in the last 15 minutes of the movie, it's explained that there's lead protecting the room that his body's in. So it didn't really work that time.
Yeah.
So once they find the body, all they have to do is run the machine a second time and
it works.
Bravo.
Well, here's one of the other things I had to say about that particular plot element is if he was protected by lead encased room.
Yeah.
The way that they find the lead encased room is the cross falls down in the chapel and the glass breaks. And then right behind the glass is the lead room. What about that part that was glass? Like, it didn't blow up a part of the lead room. It just shattered the glass cross, and then they found it. Wouldn't that like lead to? I don't know. It's like this movie.
I was really distracted by the fact that all of this happened in the last 15 minutes, and I was just trying to understand what the hell was happening.
Yeah. And that's really what happens though. Like I know it sounds like really rushed, like we just tried to rush through. Like
No,
they
like,
say he was a giant. Like no, like literally, it happened so fast where there's like he was short and like these are his fake legs, and that's how we confronted him. Like
no, this movie's about I think an hour and a half,
something like that,
and literally 95 minutes. In the last 15, 18 minutes of the movie, this is when all of this happens.
Yeah, I would just say in terms of the story, like I did enjoy this movie probably more than you did. I mean, I actually thought it was pretty fun. Like I got into it.
I didn't, just because of the pacing of this movie. This was an hour and 30 minutes movie that felt as long as Rosemary's Baby to me.
I thought it was totally okay. Like it actually didn't bother me that much. In fact, I watched Rosemary's Baby and this back to back.
I did too.
Yeah.
But Rosemary's Baby was like, it was long, but I was willing to,
Yeah, I get it.
Deal with it because, there's some cool stuff going on. And this movie, it was just like, wait, what?
Nah. I think because it reminded me of a Hammer horror movie, like a really, really cheap one. Like I was like, this is okay. I mean,
I think I also went into more expectation to this than you did.
Okay. It did win some awards, not like
no,
Oscars
it's not the worst movie that was ever made.
It's weird. It's like not like a B movie, but it's not like grand horror movie. It's in that weird area of like they could have done something really cool with it.
It's not good enough to be a cult classic or to be just a regular classic.
Yeah, that's true.
So it really falls into this weird middle ground of horror films. So
yeah, it's okay. like it's probably one of those ones where you're like you and a friend know what it is, and then nobody else does. And you're like this one's okay. Yeah.
So Donnie and I know what this movie is.
Yeah, and, exactly. But I think as far as like on a technical, so the story's a mess. Like I'll flat out say it. The story's a mess. Like
story and script in general, just all over the place in this movie.
They could have done a lot of really cool stuff with it. In fact, they had some cool stuff going on where it's like she's getting all scratched up by the cat, and the guy's kind of creepy. The guy with the glasses, Fisher. Like that stuff was cool. I did not like I thought I was gonna really like Lionel, the scientific character, but then he just ended up being such a douche.
Yeah, I know. Right?
I didn't like him. How many times did a ghost have to attack before you're like, maybe she's not making it up?
Yeah, there's only like 10 ghost attacks before he decides that, we should probably get rid of these ghosts.
She's like dead, and then they're like, I think the ghost killed her. That's like when he's finally like, I think there's a ghost here when she's like dead.
Yeah,
but I think
sadly that's not an exaggeration.
No, it isn't. No, it's not an exaggeration at all. She literally is crushed by the cross, and he's like, maybe she wasn't making it up. But I think one of the other things that maybe is great about this film is actually the technical aspects of it. It does have some cool sets. I'll say that. The sets are awesome.
The sets are great, and I think what drew you and me to this movie at first was we looked at the stills for it. And the stills for this movie look great.
Oh, yeah, they look awesome.
But I feel like we didn't see as much of that in the movie. There were a lot of outside shots.
In the beginning.
Yeah, that were really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because everything takes place inside the house, you never see that again.
Yeah.
And I was looking forward to all those foggy blue color schemed.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. There are some cool sets, but it does kind of just sit. I mean, you got to think about it. There's only 6 people in this movie. There's the guy in the beginning who gives them the mission or the
By
job.
The way, he never shows up again.
Yeah, so they give him the job in the beginning. There's these 4 characters, and there's the ghost at the end. And that's it. It's 6 people in this whole movie. And while there are some pretty cool things, like the psychic's room is actually pretty cool, like the red room.
Yeah.
And that stuff's neat. And some of the set design is kind of cool because it's kind of Victorian. And
yeah.
And
that's what drew me to the movie.
Yeah. And I actually really like the dining hall, when all stuff goes crazy in the dining hall. That's awesome. But the one thing that really bugs me about this movie is, one, the film is very grainy. They have a lot of really bad exposures.
Yeah.
So it'll be it cuts to something really dark all of a sudden, and then goes back to something that's actually shot really well, and then comes back to something that's really dark again.
Yep.
And then I noticed this because I had a job where I did color correct film, so the color timing was all over the place.
Yeah.
And they it's so inconsistent. It seems like
I know there's some scenes that are really well color graded, and then there's just ones that are just
well, it's just really weird because anything that it seems like was an insert shot, seems like the color is way off.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like the main, like you can definitely tell like this was something that had to be shot, right?
Yep.
Like them talking to each other, something like that. And it'll be like a shot of somebody's face and all the color was like really red and warm, right?
Yep.
And they cuts the guy and he's like completely green.
Yeah, I know.
And that stuff is so weird.
It's very distracting.
Yeah, and usually especially if like a scene starts, like you know how there's usually like a thing where a person walks into a room or something, that stuff will usually be like colored really weird, and sometimes it's like a little bit more grainy. I just like that on a technical aspect. It's just super weird, and like we watched it in like pretty much the highest quality we could.
Yeah,
I mean, so it was way more apparent for me.
Probably not going to find a better version of this than the Netflix one.
Yeah, I would be surprised. Because why would they put anything less on there? I mean...
And it's not like this is exactly a widely distributed movie.
Yeah, exactly. probably not as common in America either.
Yep.
So, on the technical side, it was okay. The music was okay. Like,
yeah, the music didn't do anything for me.
It was just so background music. You don't notice anything. Like
I didn't notice the music. That's the main thing. Is like...
And that is, this is like kind of one of the things where it's just, the movie's actually quiet for a lot of the scenes.
It is.
But yeah, it is kind of like, it's actually kind of glad you compared this to Suspiria because, one of the reasons Suspiria is so memorable is because it's a pretty clumsy movie.
It is.
And this movie is really clumsy too, but
it's a beautiful clumsy movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you could tell they were focusing on the art. You could tell with the music, Suspiria theme is loud and bold and the music is amazing, and this movie you could just tell that they were like trying, but it like
this movie felt very safe to me.
Exactly. There's nothing really memorable about it, and that's what kind of sucks. Like the characters are cool, but they don't do enough with them for them to stay interesting.
There's so much dialogue with Lionel by himself with his wife that just makes me hate him more. That I wish they would have cut
Lionel, I really did not like Lionel in the end, which sucks because he's like started off as a really cool character. I was like, I'm probably gonna relate to this guy, and it's just like, man, you're such a douche. This is totally not a memorable movie. If you're like seriously looking for like a background movie for a party to not pay attention to something, this is it. If you just want like random horror movie 101, like
yeah.
This is it's a Legend of Hell House. So.
Some of the problem with this movie though is so many of the scenes that were just them sitting there talking, and so I feel like it's almost kind of a weird one to have on the background. It's like you walk by and it's like, who are these people just talking in a dining hall?
Oh, he was short. Yeah, so
he's a dummy.
Yeah, I know. You just tune out. Just pay attention to the last 5 minutes.
You watch the first 30 minutes of this movie and then the last 30 minutes, and it'll make perfect sense.
It's probably true. Yeah, you don't really need the middle. So that's Legend of Hell House. There really isn't much else to say about it. It's an okay movie with an okay plot, with a really bad ending, with kind of okay production, with very unmemorable everything.
And there's not a ton of actors who go on to have prolific careers. You got Roddy McDowell. He's Planet of the Apes.
Yep.
So the film and the TV series.
Ooh.
Yep. And then Michael Gough, who is Alfred.
Yep, Alfred from Batman.
Yep.
And he's not even like credited in this movie. He's just Emmerich Belasco.
Yeah.
But he's not credited, so it's so crazy because he's like old man at this time. So
I know,
he
right?
would be ancient when he was doing Batman.
He looks like not that much older when he's doing Batman, which is funny.
It's because it's like 20 years later or something.
Yeah, I know.
So
you think that he'd look like he's dying by the time he did Batman Forever, but maybe they made him look older than.
It's like that Sean Connery thing, like where you reach a certain point and you just don't age anymore. So
Sean Connery, yep.
Level 99.
Yep.
So
saying about womanage.
Okay, we're getting crazy on this. So that's Legend of Hell House. That's it. It's like it was so boring that we started going off on a rant.
So watch a Sean Connery movie.
Yeah. So this has been Gothcast episode 16. I am Dr. Sanders.
I'm Robbie Gore.
And of course, we'll plug our social media, so you can follow us on Instagram at Gothcast. You can go to our website, gothcastradio.com. No www.
Yeah, because we've done away with all that.
Yeah.
Who would want that in there?
Yeah, you can like us on Facebook, so it's just Gothcast. You can send us an email. It's gothcastradio@gmail.com.
.com.
Yep. And of course, you can always look up our videos at Gothcast Space Video on YouTube.
It's very important that you include that space in there.
If you want to contact us through any of those means, feel free. And you have a good night and stay spooky.
Yep.